From buying your first box of minis and paint to being a lady or gentleman on the gaming table, we got you covered.
We'd like to take a moment to thank our sponsors, Dragons Lasers, Rexers Lasers, Army Painter, and the Forge Hobbies and Games.
Welcome everyone. Today we're going to do, as requested, a crusade review of Tyranids. How to build them, how to take and put the play together, and then kind of see where it sets on a point value versus a power level. And then just as a ringer, we're going to do a boarding patrol piece with it at the end too, kind of what I did when I built the list. I've built a list, kind of give an idea based on what I've done. And then kind of show how it would play into boarding patrol if you want to use it in boarding patrol. With that being said, always as greatly appreciate all the views, all the watching, and all the time spent seeing anything that we put out. I do appreciate that. And then a special thanks to our Patreons, Skip, Joey, Logan, Lilith, and Ken. So greatly appreciate that. Without further ado, we'll kind of flip it down here and see if I can get this right. I know how to look at that. Yep, it is NIDS. And that is what we are going over today. So it was requested. I did a quick and dirty on a quick rundown on the Crusade rules and how they work and how you play Crusades and how you can look at playing that into a normal game. Recently, I will be taking and putting out a boarding patrol because they do have a little snippet about Crusades and boarding patrol because you can continue to do that with your army in that. But as going back, it was asked, hey, can you kind of go over the NIDS? Because they do have a lot of neat rules in their book. And it's actually kind of interesting. We got a NIDS player and we kind of started out and he did it. And he's like, oh, if I'd have read this a little differently, I would have done this. Because I told him just, hey, just throw something together and we'll go. And I didn't know. And so as we kind of dove into his book, we realized, ooh, there's some madness and need a method to be able to take and do that. So, we took and this there, cool. We took and kind of went through it, and so I borrowed his book, so had a request, and so here it is. So of course you have your devouring of the worlds, you've got your agendas, your requisitions, and I'm just kind of going through the little thing, the little index to what goes on. Your battle traits, your battle scars, your psychic fortitudes, the crusade relics, and then there's of course a showcasing. But so the neat thing for NIDS when it comes to actually doing, let's see if I can get this right. Yeah, there we go. We'll do it like that. When we get this ruling is devouring the worlds. So you have to take, and each time, just as you would with I guess from a, you can't see that down there. It's okay, it doesn't matter. You can take, I don't want the reflection on the book. So as you take and you do any kind of battle and you're doing it crusades and you're keeping the bookkeeping, you have to basically devour a world. So just in true Tyranid fashion, bugs taking over the planet. So they have it where you generate the world and you have several different stages, and we'll kind of get into it, but you have your invasion, your predation, and your consumption. So your invasion of it, you're setting up home, and then you basically take it over and it is yours. So with that being said, you have to roll it up, and it tells you how to roll it up. You roll up a dice, you find out what you've got, and then you have to figure out how to set the stages. And so once you roll your world up, you figure that one out. You have to say, well, how much biomass do I need to move forward? How much crush resistance do I need? And so it tells you 2d3 plus this plus that. And so you build it up so you kind of have the understanding of how you're going to take over the world. And then the neat thing is you have your different stages. You have your invasion stage. We went over the stages, but as they break down, they kind of tell you. So interesting in army building, because again, you only start with 50 power level. So a lot of times you don't have enough really to build out a bunch of different things. So they give you this just up front, where in the stage 1, you can do a Vanguard attachment and you get your 3 CP refund. In stage 2, you can do your Outrider, and in stage 3 you can do your Spearhead. And so they allow you so you can take and build the army constructions without being limited, so you don't lose the CP. So kind of taking into that thought, I was like, all right, cool. But the other neat thing, and you do have some CP that you can spend on them from those in those stages, but the battle experience, because the whole reason to play Crusade is you get to level the army up. And so it would be me saying, hey, you're going to play a campaign of some sort, but your character can't level. Well, that's no fun. Like, you're playing the game, win or lose, you don't care, because every time you play, they get something, they get experience, and that's what Crusade's about. But it's interesting on the battle experience. So basically, it goes through, and in stage 1, anytime you play a battle, any of the following gained 1 extra experience point based on that, and then there are certain units that can't. So in stage 1, any Endless Multitude, Genestealers, Harpy, Hive Crone, or Lictors will gain actually 2 experience for every mission they play in. However, any Biovore, Exocrine, Haruspex, Hive Guard, Hive Tyrant, Powervores, Ripper Swarms, Crown Effects, or Tyrant Guard do not gain any experience for playing. So the only way they'd gain experience is based on your agendas and choosing those agendas. So it's like, oof. So you're like, okay, well, I'm just going to kind of lead into this and not have any of those. But you have to finish all 3 stages before you build a new world. So when you finish stage 1, you go into stage 2, and that's where it kind of gets a little even more tricky. Because now in the experience, troops gain an additional 1 experience. However, Biovores, Exocrine, Hospex, Hive Guard, Hive Tyrant, Powervores, Ripper Swarm, Star Effects, and Hive Guard do not. Now, if you kind of notice the theme going here as you take over a world from a bug standpoint in any movie you've ever seen, or just anything, just in your thought process of bugs, they start small, they continue small as they grow in, and then as they take over the world and consume it, you go into the 3rd stage. Genestealers, Harpies, Hive Crone, and Lictors do not gain any experience in this stage, and only Biovores, Exocrine, Hospex, Hive Guard, Hive Tyrant, Powervores, Ripper Swarms, Tyrant Effects, and Tyrant Guard actually gain the extra EXP. So you can kind of see it being a build-up across the thing. And as you do that, you're gaining stuff and you're gaining experience. So that's the first piece that really becomes kind of, ooh, how do I build my army construction so that out of 2 of the 3 games, which is not 2 of 3 because it does take several. So you may be in stage 1 for 3 games, stage 2 for 3 games, and stage 3 for 3 games. So we'll just do that for example. How do I build my army construction that in 6 of my 9 games, I'm gaining experience? Because if you kind of go heavy on the other side with all the big boys, they're not gaining any experience. You only get it when you get here. And so it becomes very tricky on the army construction. So this one is actually probably I haven't seen them all, but out of all the ones I've looked at, the most in-depth on being prepared from that aspect. Because at the same token is, how do I make it so 6 of my games, but I lose 3 games when I'm gaining experience? So it's very tricky in army construction. And throughout it, you actually gain how you gain the biomass and the crusher. What's it called? I lost my brain. Crushed resistance. You gain those by taking and doing agendas, and so we'll go into those in a second. But once you complete the stages, you're able to use your extra stuff, biomass, for different things. And one of the interesting ones is the swarm grows. Increase your Crusade's force supply limit by 3. So as we stated, all Crusades should start with 50, and you have to build within the 50, and then you can use requisition points, or in this case, biomass to grow. And so that's an interesting one. You can change out stuff. You can give a unit's experience. You can use 0 rec to get a warlord trait. You can physiology requisitions, and you can just gain a requisition point if you want. Down here at the bottom, just buy requisition points. You only can have 5. You gain 1 per battle, but say you needed 2. Say you had some people out of action, you wanted to take care of some of those throughout it. So that's kind of the army building, how it goes, and the way you go through the world. So if you just think about Tyranids and bugs take over, it makes sense. Hey, they take over a planet in waves, and it's really neat how it plays thematically. It does kind of make it difficult on army construction. And so I'll kind of explain my thoughts on it. I kind of went through and built. Not saying it's what you have to do, but just me, if I was doing it based on the thought process of growing my force. Because again, the neat thing is your extra biomass, you can spend 2 for 3 power limit, which means you're able to go grab more models to build into your force to give you a more variety of what you're taking into everything. And then your agendas infest the prey world. So this is one of the ways that you gain the crush resistance and biomass is basically endless multitude. If you have any of those in any quarters outside of 6 inches from the center, each turn you gain a tally for every quarter you're in. And so say in turn 1 you're in 2 quarters, you gain 2, and then turn 2 you're in 3, you get 3. And basically, based on your tally, you gain biomass and you gain crush resistance accordingly. And so you can gain it that way. And that's just basically kind of having yourself all over the place. So you could, in theory, go in and build you a 50 power level force that is just built around going and getting in all the quarters and dying, just to gain these two to allow you to move forward. That does become a little tricky, but it is doable. I see a pathway with that one. You have to kind of play around and build really heavy into troops and endless thing. And then your 6 of your 9 games, again, we're going back on the 3-3-3 method, is just my aspect of looking at 6 to 9 games. You're really gaining some experience for those. And then the last one, you're still gaining 1 because it's troops and endless because they're not kept from gaining. So you would gain 2, 2, and 2. And then as you grow that up and take over, having that extra biomass would allow you to buy the bigger creatures to allow you to swap things out based on which stage of planet takeover you are. Because that's really what this boils down to, is you build a 50 power level. Your goal is to get it to 100 or get it higher so that you can bring in other models to allow you to have flexibility based on what stage of world takeover you are. But to get this engine going, and this is what we ran into when we did it the first time, because I didn't know it, and I didn't tell him to read it, and he just built it. If you don't build the engine correctly to build these things, you can't grow it to get the other big toys to play with. Because what happens is you're just not gaining anything and you're not moving forward. Another one is hunt and slay. You keep a kill tally, and based on how many kills you get with prey targets, you get points there. And then transform prey world. This one is about taking and putting and doing actions. You can take and put something down once a turn. One unit with hive tendril infantry can take and put this down, and you have to put down basically a what is it called? What do they call it? An implanted tyranniform spore. You can put that down. It's an objective marker that has to be 12 outside of each other. If you get 3 of them, you get 1 and 1. If you get 4, you get D3 and 1. If you get 5, you get 3 and D3. And actually, we'll go back here. It's just each time you play a battle, your Crusade force gains 1 battle. Each time you win a battle, your Crusade force gains 1 biomass, 1 Crusade resistance. Each time you lose a battle, your Crusade force loses 1 biomass to a minimum of 0. So it becomes very tricky because if you're not winning, you're also losing 1. So you're kind of, how am I going forward? And that's why I say 3, 3, and 3, based on just average rolls. If you lost all 3 games, but you were able to take and complete this in all 5 turns, you would get 2, 2, and 2, which would get you enough to kind of advance to the next stage. So that's why I base it on, you're looking at 9 games probably before you take over a planet. It could be 10, could be 11, depending on what you choose and how it goes. And then you have your requisition points, and you can take, if you have NIDs, you look at it, you can go in there and see those and see what you're wanting to take and do with the requisition points. It's just like from the regular Crusade book. You have choices there. Just like normal, when they level up, you have your battle traits. You can roll the D6, and you have your battle scars, which is neat on this one because your battle scars, if you roll a 5 or 6, depending on the units, it tells you to go back to the core book. And so that's pretty neat from there. You have your psychic fortitudes that you can take and choose, things level up. And then you have your Crusade relics. This one, you have Hive Tendril 1, 2, Psyker. So you've got a regular one, a Psyker one. Actually, I think it's Psyker models for both. Yes, it is Psyker models for both. And then you go into your heroic and legendary ones here. And you can read those and look over those on your own. So not really going into those. It's just more of the army construction and how you would build it. So I'm going to take and flip this page. It's going to be very kind of off the wall. I don't know if you can see it. It's my chicken scratch, but it has a method to its madness. So the way I first started off is I said, all right, Vanguard, Outrider, Spearhead. That's how I can take in, if I had HQ, I could do those to allow me to take and do that. And so I kind of thought, all right, how do I take and build it? So the first thing I looked at is the one where you have things in quarters, the endless mine. I was like, well, go heavy troops, you could go 6 troops, you could build it that way. That's one way. But I was like, I'd like to have a little more thought process. So let me grab my phone because I actually have this built on Battlescribe. And so as I was messing around, what I figured out is I could take 10 Hormagaunts times 3, and that's 12 power level. And then I was like, well, Vanguard would be G-Stealers. So I was like, all right, cool. So I can take 3 units of 5 of those. And those are power level 5 each. I did change it up and went with 2 G-Stealers of things and 1 Lictor. And I have a reason for that, but I'll explain it in just a minute. And then for my Outriders, I was like, oh, the Raveners look pretty cool. So if I took 3 units of those, that gives me an Outrider. And then I was looking at the Spearhead. You can look at Biovores, you can look at different things, but then I started running into 50 power level limit. And so I had a Broodlord, and I was looking at the Tyranid Prime back and forth. And I was like, well, heck, since I'm set with a 3 Termagants, not Termagants, I'm sorry, I went with Hormagaunts because I wanted the movement. Hormagaunts, and of course I've given everybody the Toxic Sacs because it's power level, so I kind of put all of it out there. It's like, well, I could just do 2 HQs, and so I went with the Tyranid Prime and the Broodlord. So then every time I'm basically just running a battalion as I'm going into my Crusade missions each time. Because again, Arcs of Omen and detachment rules are there for Arcs of Omen. I haven't really done it, and I probably would do it if people want to see it. We'll go over Arcs of Omen and some of the thought process there. But for Crusade, you're still using your narrative play, which still means your basic list constructions. So I was like, well, cool. If I do that, then I don't have to worry about having any Spearhead people because I don't have to, turn 3, or when I'm taking over the world in the 3rd phase, I don't have to have that for the CP back because I'm going to get it back because I'm always running this. So at the end of the day, what it comes down to is I've got a Broodlord, and he is decked out with everything that he can get from that standpoint to bump his points up. A Tyranid Prime. Now, the Tyranid Prime is very tricky because most of the time when you're playing power level, you would take and put everything on them. But in this one, and again, I'll get to it in a minute, there's 2 things I left off. The 2 things I left off were no flesh hooks and no adrenal glands. And there's a reason for point-wise, and I'll explain it here in a minute. Then I went with 3 Hormagaunts, 2 Gene-Stealers, I didn't change this, and 1 Lictor, and 3 units of Ravener. So, what we're going to do is I'm going to go back to the book here, and I'll explain kind of why I did what I did from that standpoint. Basically, the way it's set up now, so when I have the two HQs, I've got 3 units of the Hormagaunts, 2 units of G-Stealers, and 1 Lictor. And then you've got 3 Raveners. And you'll take, and in stage 1, when you take and you fight, your Hormagaunts and your Gene-Stealers will both gain 2 experience for each time they fight in Rage 1. Hang on just one second here, folks. We are recording it. I might cut it out. Maybe I can't. Cool. So you've got 2 experience coming from your Hormagaunts, your Gene-Stealers. Your Raveners will get 1 experience because they do not fall under the ones that don't. And your Broodlord and your Tyranid Prime will also gain 1 experience. So every unit in the army will gain 1 experience when you play a Crusade of a 50 power point limit. What's cool is when you get through stage 2, and most of the time what I'm going to take based on this one, the way I've kind of built the army, taking over the world, is I'm always going to do Transform the Prey. Because everything is a hive tendril and everything is an infantry. So every unit in the army, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, I got 11 units. One of those units can perform the action as long as it's 12 inches from the other marker. So on average, 4 should be very achievable. 5 probably is achievable. And so I would be getting 3 biomass and D3 crusher resistance points gain. Even if I'm losing the game, I'm getting 2 biomass. So in 3 games, I've got 6 biomass. If you go back to the page here, biomass is 3d3, d3 plus 3, and 3. So I should be able to move on roughly from stage 1 in about 3 games. But also with those 3 games, I'm going to have my Hormagaunts are actually going to be, they're going to actually get battle traits because they're going to level up so you get 2 experience each time. I mean, I'm not even doing any of the other agendas. I'm not even doing stuff that would allow me to take and give anything. So the Hormagaunts are going to be leveled after those 3 games. The Gene Stealers and Lictor are going to be leveled after those 3 games. So that's really cool from that standpoint. And then when you go into stage 2, the way this is built, all troops would gain 2. So what would happen is my Hormagaunts would be gaining 2 still. My Gene Stealers and Lictor would gain 1, and my Raveners would be gaining 1. My Broodlord and my Tyranid Prime would gain 1 as well. And so that one, same concept, takes about the same. So your Hormagaunts are really on a fast track based on the way they're moving just by playing the game. They don't even have to live. They don't have to do anything. You could use those 3 units by just running around and dropping stuff. But when you've got them loaded out, that's a lot of attacks from 10 models kind of going into it. And just so you know, every one of these are base set at their base set minimum unit size. I did not bump them up to 20, bumping them up to 10 or anything like that. And then we go into stage 3. Basically, in stage 3, no, I don't have any of the big boys. No, I don't have any of those things yet. But the Broodlord, the Tyranid Prime, the Gene Stealers, the Hormagaunts, the Lictor, and the Raveners all will gain 1 experience. So for playing, every model in the unit gets 1 experience. Again, I tried to go through so that everything was getting something for playing, because if you're stuck in one stage for too long, your models aren't getting anything, and it's not that it's not fun, but you want stuff to kind of grow. For me, the reason I built it this way is your whole army is gaining experience. It's gaining a lot of experience based on what stage it's in. And based on me building it around the concept of the Transform Prey world, I should be about every 3 games moving to the next one. Now, you could take it around Infest Prey world, which gets tricky, but you could take 6 units of Hormagaunts. It's kind of the same thing and drop off the Raveners. And you basically, the Gene Stealers and Lictors, I did lie. They will not get experience in the stage 3 consumption. That one is a 0. I was wrong on that. Let me fix that. So that's the one time you're not getting anything. Everybody else would be. Same concept if you did 6 units of Hormagaunts. But that's a really fast way. And what's cool is because you're gaining all this biomass and you're moving the agendas, even if you get stuck because you don't meet the crushed resistance, if you're gaining enough, the whole goal to make sure you're gaining that is so that when it's done, the swarm grows. For every 2, I get 3 power level. And so those power level, you would want to grow those to go get your big boys. Go get your big boys that can't really gain experience through the first stages, so that you have kind of, hey, I've got my first 2 stages built with a list I'm currently using, and you're growing so that you can build a list that plays in stage 3 to get experience there. So it really becomes cool, because what I would do is, once I do it, I would choose one of the either the Byrivores, the Hive Guard, Hive Tyrant, Ripper Swarms, one of the ones here that gains double. And in this stage, I would drop the Gene Stealers and Lictor to pick up those so that they're getting AXP. So then the army's kind of growing together. So that's kind of in a very long-winded, and I apologize, long-winded way of taking and building the structure around building the army so that you can actually grow as you're playing the games. Now that's just Crusade. 50 power level. I think the list is at 49 power level. It's roughly, which is actually very interesting points-wise, it's about 1,210 points. So that's pretty neat there. So then I took that list. So in my list building, you could do this with the other. I was like, all right, boarding action, because we started doing those. So let me see those. And you've got all your rules here. And I'm going to go into a boarding action, how you actually do it through everything. I'll do a list of that, the rules and so forth. But basically you get 0 to 1 HQ, 0 to 3 troops, 0 to 3 elites. You have to choose one of the factions, a sub-faction. Your units, you can, each elite squad can only have 1 unit. You can't have double of the same unit. Monsters, vehicles, jump packs, cavalry, and those can't be in it. You can only have 1 character per detachment. Go away. It's okay. That's the one I need. Sweet. And then unit size, it's always min unit size. And then you can bump it, but really it's min. You don't want to do with that. And then it kind of goes into there. So that's kind of that. I've left it on this page. Hopefully you can read some of it. I don't know for sure of all of it. And then if you don't have a warlord, you can take and do the other. So with that being said, there is also the PDF that is free for people to get. You can go to the website and grab it. The book you have to get. The I'm gonna do this, Arcs of Omen, Abaddon. All it is boarding patrol, which is really cool, and all the rules inside there. The mustering, the boarding patrol, high flight, high fleet. It talks about neurothropes, zonothropes, and venothropes. Down the road, you can look at those. Again, this is not just boarding patrol. This is how do I take this Crusade force that I've built in the Tyranid book and use it when I go play boarding patrol, so I can get some more leveling from that. Because again, it's really cool when boarding patrol is really cool at 500 points. So you're getting kind of some bonuses if you're not playing the big game. You're just playing the small one. It's like, oh, how can things grow and so forth. So you can include both. You can have only one lictor. So again, the lictor falls underneath you can include one lictor, which would bypass, I think, your commander, the keyword for the character. I'll have to double check that. It gets tricky, but I think I built it right. And if not, that's okay. I'll make it work somehow. I'll look at it. I'll kind of go over what I did, and I could be wrong, and if it is, that's an easy fix somehow, some way, maybe. Yeah, it'll be okay. You can only include one lictor. Well, actually, so just for my own namesake, because now I've done this and I don't want to tell anybody wrong. Oh, we're good. Lictor does not have the character keyword, so I'm good. I'm making sure, but I am good. So this does work and everything. I thought of that for a second when they said it. You can include one fast attack slot if you had Ripper Swarms, and you can have Termagants, Hormagaunts. And then it just basically says their movement and all the breakdowns there. Just the restrictions and so forth. But really and truly, it was the one lictor. So with that being said, for my boarding patrol, based on the way that I built, again, a Broodlord, a Tyranid Prime. The Tyranid Prime does not have adrenal glands or flesh hooks. The Hormagaunts are loaded out. The one lictor, the two Gene Stealers, and the three Ravagers. My boarding patrol from that 49 power level for any Crusades, because again, Crusades can be done, and boarding patrol actually does have a thing that says you can bring Crusades in, just certain agendas and stuff, but it's all good. You could have the Prime, 2 units of Hormagaunts, a unit of Gene Stealers, and the lictor, and that puts you at 500 points. So 500 points. 5 units from your list of 50 power level, because you're not playing power level when you're playing boarding patrol, playing points. So it's where you kind of can play that game, and that's why I took it off of the Prime, because it's like, you know what, I don't need those. So therefore you have a 500 point boarding patrol. So you could take that, play that, and then when you go to a 50 power level game, you go take still the whole army, but every time you're playing, so it's really neat because you're gaining the experience. So that's kind of the thoughts on everything. I know it kind of was a little all over the place, but I have method to my madness. I took and went through and made sure I built everything the way that I wanted to see it be built. From that standpoint, like I said, going to do a boarding patrol. If you have questions on building boarding patrol armies, put in the chat, say, hey, I want to see a boarding patrol army of this, or if I want to see a Crusade and a boarding patrol, I'm willing to take, I'll sit down, grab the books and put it together. I've had one already asked. Hopefully this answered the Tyranid question of, hey, that looks very complex for Crusades. It is a little bit until you kind of break it down and go, how is it growing? So the Crusades in it is a little different because, one, you're not getting to take and go, I just want to play with these toys and level them because of the restrictions of the book, but eventually you can take and build it so that you can. You just have to kind of go, oh, that looks neat. Oh, that looks neat. And very thematically go, this is how Tyranids would take over a planet in a mass swarm and a mass growth. And so getting it built so that everything's growing very quickly, allowing you to score the agendas to get the crush resistance and the biomass, so that you can take and then use that to help also buy power level to allow you to go get some other models to bring in so that you can take, and depending on what stage you're in, you're there. If you go into it and you go, I'm just going to build the list this way and this is my 50 power level, and then read the rules, as we've learned, that makes it very hard to get that engine started. So I'm not saying I built a competitive one, because I don't think it's not like it's OP competitive Crusade list. But what I did is I built one to create the engine to allow you to grow what you need as a Tyranid player from a Crusade standpoint to actually grow your hive mind, so that you can take over more planets, take over the planet you're finished, and take over more planets very fast. So it's really neat because I feel like it has a very big snowball effect versus some of the other armies. It is very thematic. And so I could find myself, like, even building that list, I'm like, oh, I need to find these models. I think I would enjoy just playing this from a boarding patrol Crusade standpoint, not even competitive, not a 2K game, not anything from that, but just having fun in playing it that way. So it's something that I'm looking at. So one, greatly appreciate asking to do it, because it does take and give me some excitement just to build it. I love list building. I love theory crafting. I love doing those. So any requests, put them down in the comments. If you liked it, put it down in the comments. If you have questions still, put them in the comments. Comments allow me to take and figure out what content I may produce next. I do have agendas and things that we're going. We've got all kinds of things going on. But with that, everyone have a great and wonderful day.